This is lecture number 4, handout for the central nervous system, components of the nervous system, central CNS, brainstem, spinal cord. CNS contains brainstem, spinal cord, PNS, peripheral, spinal nerve, cranial nerve. PNS is peripheral. Peripheral contains somatic and automatic. Somatic, skin, skeletal muscle. Automatic, nerves, organs. Automatic, somatic, peripheral. Automatic, parasympathetic and sympathetic. And enteric. Automatic, parasympathetic, sympathetic. Automatic, sympathetic, and parasympathetic movement. Parasympathetic is sympathetic is like your adrenaline rush, and then parasympathetic is kind of your natural movements that you don't notice, your automatic ones. So automatic moves the nerves and organs. Somatic, skin and skeletal muscle. All right, moving on to skin. Sensory is afferent. Sensory is afferent. Sensory is afferent. Motor is efferent. Motor is efferent. Motor is efferent. Visceral motor goes to organ. Visceral motor goes to organ. Visceral motor goes to organ. Basic functional unit of the nervous system is gathering information from the surroundings and submitting it to the brain, generating a response to that information. Nervous system functions: sensation, integration, motor activity. Nervous system functions: sensation, integration, motor activity. Nervous system functions: sensation, integration, motor activity. Somatic sensory, visceral sensory, somatic sensory, visceral sensory, integration in spinal cord or brain. Motor activity: somatic motor, autonomic motor, somatic motor, autonomic motor. Somatic sensory is skin and muscles. Autonomic is or visceral is automatic. The basic functional unit of the nerve system is the neuron. The basic functional unit of the nervous system is the neuron. The basic functional unit of the nervous system is the neuron. 3 functional types of the neuron is sensory, interneuron, and motor neuron. 3 functional types of the neuron is sensory neuron, interneuron, motor neuron. 3 functional types of the neuron is sensory neuron, interneuron, motor neuron. 3 shapes of the neuron: unipolar, bipolar, multipolar. 3 shapes of the neuron: unipolar, bipolar, multipolar. 3 shapes of the neuron: unipolar, bipolar, multipolar. Sensory neuron: unipolar, bipolar. Interneuron: multipolar. Motor neuron: multipolar. Unipolar has to do with touch. Bipolar has to do with special senses. Multipolar has to do with motor. Anatomy of a neuron: dendrites are the ends where it kind of branches out. Dendrites is the end of a neuron where it branches out. Dendrites is the end of a neuron where it branches out. Dendrites is the end of a neuron where it branches out. Cell body, cell body, cell body. Axon hillock controls firing of neuron. Axon hillock controls firing of neuron. Axon hillock controls firing of neuron. Axon carries nerve impulses away from the body. Axon carries nerve impulses away from the body. Axon carries nerve impulses away from the body. Synaptic knobs, axon terminals. Synaptic knobs, axon terminals. Synaptic knobs, axon terminals. Myelin isolates, wraps neuron. Myelin isolates, wraps neuron. Schwann cells makes myelin. Schwann cells makes myelin. Schwann cells make myelin. Nodes of Ranvier facilitate rapid conduction of nerve impulses. Nodes of Ranvier facilitate the rapid conduction of nerve impulses. Nodes of Ranvier facilitate rapid conduction of nerve impulses. Axon terminals are at the end of those dendrites. Axon terminals at the end of the dendrites. Neurotransmitters are also at the end of the dendrites. They're at the bottom end. Neurotransmitters are at the bottom end of the dendrites. Axon terminals and neurotransmitters. Neurological cells. The cell supports the neural tissue. PNS. Schwann cells are PNS. Oligodendrocytes, astrocytes, microglial, ependymal cells, microglial cells, ependymal cells are CNS. Schwann cells are PNS, peripheral nervous system. Oligodendrocytes, astrocytes, microglial, ependymal cells are CNS. Oligodendrocytes, astrocytes, microglial cells, ependymal cells are CNS. Oligodendrocytes makes myelin. CNS makes myelin. Astrocytes bridge between capillaries and neurons. Microglial cells are phagocytic. Endymal cells, choroid plexus, make CSF. Together are called glial. Oligodendrocytes, CNS makes myelin. Astrocytes bridge between capillaries and neurons. Microglial cells, phagocytic. Ependymal cells, choroid plexus, make CSF. Together are called glial. Interneuron, spinal cord, interneuron, spinal cord, interneuron, spinal cord, motor neuron, muscles, motor neuron, muscles, sensory neuron, mouth, sensory neuron, mouth. So here's a little drawing of the spinal cord with the nerves going out. There's two, and they eventually connect in the sensory, and sensory goes in, motor goes out of the spine, sensory in and motor out of the spine, sensory in and motor out of the spine. They go in through different pathways. When it comes out of the spine, one side, the straight end, is called the ventral nerve root. Ventral nerve root. Ventral nerve root. The other side is called the dorsal nerve root. And that has that's where the sensory comes in. Dorsal nerve root. Dorsal nerve root. Motor out. Ventral nerve root. Dorsal root ganglion is that kind of bump there when it comes out the spinal cord. Dorsal root ganglion. Dorsal root ganglion. Dorsal root ganglion. We got the mixed spinal nerve where the sensory comes in and the motor goes out. That's where this pathway where they combine. It's called the mixed spinal nerve. Mixed spinal nerve. Mixed spinal nerve. Gray matter, neuronal cell bodies, spinal cord. Gray matter, neuronal cell bodies, spinal cord. White matter, axons plus dendrites, sending and receiving info. White matter, axons plus dendrites, sending and receiving info. Myelin regenerates when part of the nerve dies. Dorsal root ganglion contains cell bodies of sensory neurons. Dorsal root ganglion contains cell bodies of sensory neurons. Oligodendrocytes makes myelin. Oligodendrocytes makes myelin. Now to the brain. Protective coverings. Meninges. Meninges are protective coverings of the brain. Meninges are protective coverings of the brain. Types of meninges are durum matter, arachnoid matter, and PM matter. Types of meninges are durum matter, arachnoid matter, and PM matter. Types of meninges are durum matter, arachnoid matter, and PM matter. Durum matter is tough mother, hard to stretch. Durum matter, tough mother, hard to stretch. Arachnoid matter, subarachnoid space under the arachnoid. Holds cerebral spinal fluid. The choroid plexus makes CSF. Arachnoid matter has subarachnoid space under the arachnoid. CSF, cerebral spinal fluid. The coracoid plexus makes that. Arachnoid matter, subarachnoid space, which holds the CSF. supracoracoid plexus makes CSF. PM matter tightly adhered to the brain. Diractoid space separates PM matter. PM matter tightly adhered to the brain. Diractoid space separates PM matter. PM matter tightly adhered to the brain. Diractoid space separates PM matter. Tissues of the brain, grain white matter. Tissues of the brain, grain white matter. Tissues of the brain, grain white matter. Grain white matter is organized into cerebrum, diencephalon, brainstem, cerebellum. Grain white matter is organized into cerebrum, diencephalon, brainstem, cerebellum. Grain white matter is organized into cerebrum, diencephalon, brainstem, cerebrum. Has chambers, fluids in it. CSF, types of fluids is CSF and blood. CSF and blood. Derm matter, arachnoid, and pia. Arachnoid granulations filter CSF. Arachnoid granulations filter CSF. Arachnoid granulations filter CSF. Dural venous channel. Dural venous channel. Venous drainage channel out of the brain. Venous drainage channel out of the brain. Venous drainage channel out of the brain. Arachnoid matter, subarachnoid space. Arachnoid matter, subarachnoid space. PM matter, tissues of the brain, grain white matter. PM matter, tissues of the brain, grain white matter. Organized into cerebrum, diencephalon, brainstem, and cerebellum. Cerebrum, gyrus versus sulcus versus fissure. Cerebrum, gyrus, sulcus, fissure. Cerebrum, gyrus, sulcus, fissure. Cerebral lobes, frontal, motor initiation, higher thinking. Frontal, motor initiation, higher thinking. Frontal, motor initiation, higher thinking. Temporal, hearing, memory, and integration. Temporal, hearing, memory, and integration. Temporal, hearing, memory, and integration. Parietal, post-central gyrus, sensory interpretation. Parietal, sensory interpretation. Parietal, sensory interpretation. Occipital, sight, occipital, sight, occipital, sight. Tissues of the brain, cerebrum, diencephalon, brainstem, cerebellum. Tissues of the brain, cerebrum, diencephalon, brainstem, cerebellum. Tissue of the brain, cerebrum, diencephalon, brainstem, cerebrum, cerebellum. Tissues of the brain, cerebrum, diencephalon, brainstem, cerebellum. Cerebral specialties, white matter, relay, white matter, relay, white matter, relays. Precentral gyrus has to do with motor. Precentral gyrus, motor. Precentral gyrus, motor. Central gyrus has to do with sensory. Central gyrus, sensory. Central gyrus, sensory. Central gyrus, sensory. Central sulcus separates parietal and frontal lobes. 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 Cerebral cortex has to do with processing. Cerebral cortex has to do with processing. Cerebral cortex, processing. Okay. DRG, gray matter. DRG, gray matter. DRG, gray matter. Cerebral specialties, corpus callosum. Corpus callosum, corpus callosum. Cerebral specialties, white matter axons. Relay equals relay area. White matter axons equals relay area, inner mass and continuous with white matter of spinal cord. White matter axons equals relay area, inner mass and continuous with white matter of spinal cord. Gray matter cell bodies, integration, outer cortex and basal ganglia. Gray matter cell bodies equals integration, outer cortex and basal ganglia. Gray matter cell bodies integration equals integration, outer cortex and basal ganglia. Diencephalon, thalamus, hypothalamus, epithalamus, pituitary gland, pineal. Diencephalon, thalamus, hypothalamus, epithalamus, pituitary gland, pineal. Diencephalon, thalamus, hypothalamus, epithalamus, pituitary gland, pineal. Thalamus, sensory relay center. Thalamus is a sensory relay center. Thalamus is a sensory relay center. Hypothalamus is automatic regulation. Hypothalamus has to do with automatic regulation. Hypothalamus, automatic regulation. Epithalamus, neuroendocrine function. Epithalamus, neuroendocrine function. Epithalamus, neuroendocrine function. Pituitary gland, master gland, endocrine function. pituitary gland, master gland, endocrine function, pituitary gland, master gland, endocrine function, pineal, melatonin, pineal, melatonin, pineal, melatonin, brainstem, midbrain, visual, auditory, reflex centers, motor controls, head movements, corpora, quadrigemina, corpora, inferior, auditory, superior visual, corpora, quadrigemina, superior colliculi, visual, inferior colliculi, auditory, corpora, quadrigemina, superior visual, inferior auditory, pons is a motor relay center. Pons is a motor relay center. Pons is a motor relay center. It connects the spinal cord, cerebellum, and cerebrum. The pons motor relay center connects the spinal cord, cerebellum, and cerebrum. Medulla is part of the larger brainstem. It's vital reflex center. Respiration has to do with respiration and heart rate. Medulla is the vital reflex center. Has to do with respiration and heart rate. Medulla, vital reflex center. When the information is going towards the brain, it goes off to the cerebellum. It goes to the cerebellum, and then also goes to the basal ganglia. Basal ganglia transfers through the basal ganglia in the motor. Basal ganglia motor. Okay, cerebellum, folia is the white matter, or the gray matter. Folia is gray matter of the cerebellum. Arbor vitae is the white matter of the cerebellum. Cerebellar peduncles communicate with other CNS of the cerebellum. Skeletal muscles coordination. Cerebellum has to do with the skeletal muscles coordination. Cerebellum folia has to do with gray matter. Arbor vitae of the cerebellum is white matter. Cerebellar peduncles communicate with other CNS. Skeletal muscle coordination of the cerebellum. What is brain ventricle? Brain ventricle is a hollow space where CSF is produced and temporarily stored. Brain ventricle is a hollow space where CSF is produced and temporarily stored. Brain ventricle is a hollow space where CSF is produced and temporarily stored. Choroid plexus, ependymal cells. Choroid plexus makes CSF. Ependymal cells, choroid plexus, ependymal cells. Ventricle, there's two lateral ventricles, 1/3 ventricle, 1/4 ventricle, two lateral ventricles, 1/3 ventricle, 1/4 ventricle. Where does CSF go? What does it do? CSF circulates the subarachnoid space and down the middle of the spinal cord. CSF circulates the subarachnoid space and down the middle spinal cord. CSF circulates the subarachnoid space and down the middle spinal cord. CSF function is to cushion, support, deliver nutrients, pick up waste. CSF function is to cushion, support, deliver nutrients, pick up waste. CSF function is to cushion, support, deliver nutrients, pick up waste. Gravity and pressure drive circulate it. CNS includes the neuron. Label, identify parts of the neuron. Brain model. Okay. Peripheral nervous system. Cranial nerves. PNS. Arise from the brain. Their function can be sensory, motor, mixed. There are 12 of them. Peripheral nervous system, cranial nerves, PNS. Arise from the brain. Their function can be sensory, motor, mixed. There are 12. There are 12 of them. PNS arise from the brain. Their function can be sensory, motor, mixed. There are 12 of them. PNS arise from the brain. Their function can be sensory, motor, mixed. There are 12 of them. 31 pairs of spinal nerves, mixed spinal nerves, carrying motor and sensory information between CNS and PNS. 31 pairs of spinal nerves, mixed spinal nerves, carrying motor and sensory information between CNS and PNS. Olfactory nerve has to do with smell. Olfactory nerve has to do with smell. Optic nerve, sight. Optic nerve, sight. Oculomotor nerve, eyeball movement. Oculomotor nerve, eyeball movement. Trochlear nerve, oblique muscle movement. Oculomotor nerve, trochlear nerve, oblique eye muscle movement. Trochlear nerve, oblique eye muscle movement. Trigeminal nerve, sensory to face to motor. Trigeminal nerve, sensory to face to motor. Abducens nerve, lateral rectus eye. Abducens nerve, lateral rectus eye. Facial nerve, 2/3 of taste. Facial nerve, 2/3 of taste. Facial nerve, 2/3 of taste. Vestibulocular nerve, hearing. Vestibulocular hearing. Vestibulocular hearing. Glossopharyngeal nerve, swallow, taste, 1/3. Glossopharyngeal nerve, swallow, taste. Vagus nerve, brain, speech, heart. Vagus nerve, brain, speech, heart. Accessory nerve, trapezius, sternocleidomastoid. Accessory nerve, trapezius, sternocleidomastoid. Hypoglossal nerve, tongue. Hypoglossal nerve, tongue. Which of the following has to do with taste and facial? Facial nerve has to do with taste, and the glossopharyngeal nerve has to do with taste. Nerve plexus, organization of spinal nerve again. Ventral rami of spinal nerve combines to form networks of nerve fibers. There are 4 ventral rami spinal nerves: cervical, brachial, lumbar, sacral, cervical, posterior, head, and whole neck. Brachial, upper extremities, lumbar, anterior, lower extremities, sacral, posterior, lower extremities. Nerve plexus, organization of spinal nerve. Ventral rami of the spinal nerve combines to form networks of the nerve fibers. There are 4: cervical, brachial, lumbar, sacral, cervical, posterior, head, and whole neck. Brachial, upper extremity, lumbar, anterior and lower extremity, sacral, posterior and lower extremity. So in class, she had us write the dorsal ramus and the ventral ramus. It's where the nerves go out and wrap back around. On top, it's called the dorsal ramus, and on the bottom, it's called the ventral ramus. Dorsal ramus, ventral ramus. Cervical plexus, C1 through C4 and C5. Skin and muscles of the neck and head and shoulders region. Pharynx nerve, cervical plexus. Cervical plexus, C1 through C4 and C5. Cervical plexus. Skin and muscles of the neck and head, shoulder region. Pharynx nerve. Continuous medullaris end of the spine. Continuous medullaris end of the spine. Filum terminal anchors the spine into the coccyx. Filum terminal anchors the spine into the coccyx. Lumbar nerve, sensation to groin and genitals. Lumbar nerve, sensation to groin and genitals. Lumbar nerve, sensation to groin and genitals. Filum terminal anchors spine into coccyx. Conus medullaris connects the end of the spine. Which of the nerves from the cervical plexus, which of the prytrans brachial plexus, so anterior linear, brachial plexus C5 through T1, variable contribution, roots, trunks, divisions, cords, nerves, auxiliary, radial, median, ulnar, musculature, entire upper extremity, some neck, shoulder muscles, brachial plexus, C5 through T1. A, variable contribution. 2, roots, trunks, divisions, cords, nerves. A, auxiliary, radial, median, ulnar, musculature. 3, entire upper extremity and some neck and shoulder musculature. Thoracic, spinal nerves, T1 through T12. 2, course along the costal groove of ribs, 1 through 12. 3, motor to intercostal muscles and sensory to thoracic integument. Thoracic spinal nerves, T1 through T12. Course goes along the costal groove of the ribs, 1 through 12. Motor to intercostal muscles and sensory to thoracic integument. That's what the thoracic spinal nerves does. Lumbar plexus, L1 through L4, variable contributions. Lumbar plexus, roots, divisions, nerves. Lumbar plexus femoral obturator. Lower abdomen, anterior and medial portions of the lower extremity. Lumbar plexus, L1 through L4, variable contribution, roots, divisions, nerves. Lumbar plexus femoral obturator, lower abdomen, anterior and medial portions of the lower extremity. Sacral plexus, L4 through 5 and S1 through 4. Roots, divisions, nerves. Lumbosacral trunk, sciatic. Sciatic equals common fibular nerve and tibial nerve, the sacral plexus. Lower back, pelvis, perineum, posterior thigh and leg, 2 parts of the sciatic nerve, tibial, femoral. Sacral plexus, L4 through 5 and S1 through 4. Roots and divisions, nerves. Lumbosacral trunk, sciatic. Sciatic equals common fibular nerve and tibial nerve. Sacral plexus. Lower back, pelvis, perineum, posterior thigh and leg, 2 parts of the sciatic nerve, tibial and femoral. PNS. Start with the PNS drawing, the autonomic nerve system. That's what my teacher had us do today. Sensory goes to the spinal cord just outside of it. Starts with a D, dendrites. I don't know what it's called. And from there, it goes to the pseudo-nipular, and then gets relayed to the cerebellum, and that goes to the thalamus. That goes up to the gyrus, and then it relays to the lateral gyrus, and back down to the interneuron, which is gray matter, and out to the muscle, and I believe that is the autonomic nervous system. Yeah, autonomic. Some neural gray, dendrites white, neural gray, dendrites white, neural gray, dendrites night, upper motor, upper motor, precentral, chord, appropriate, lower motor, same nerve, lower motor, same nerve. Okay. Upper motor sends it to the right place. Okay, we'll just get back to the other one. Autonomic nervous system, PNS. PNS, autonomic nervous system. ANS, general information, sensory input from viscera, motor impulses, involuntary effectors, A, smooth muscle, cardiac muscle, glandular epithelium, I, sympathetic division, I, parasympathetic division, ANS, general information, autonomic nervous system. Number 1, sensory input from viscera. Number 2, motor impulses to involuntary effectors. A, smooth muscle, cardiac muscle, glandular epithelium. I, sympathetic division, I, parasympathetic division. Structural uniqueness. Number 1, utilizes a 2-neuron pathway for efferent outgoing information output. Structural uniqueness of the ANS. Preganglionic neuron, CNS to ganglia. B, postganglionic neuron, ganglia to organ. Structural uniqueness of the autonomic nervous system utilizes a 2-neuron pathway for efferent information output. A, preganglionic neuron. I, CNS to ganglion. B, postganglionic neuron. I, ganglionic to organ. Sympathetic division, preganglion, thoracic lumbar. Sympathetic division, thoracolumbar. Number 2, sympathetic chain ganglia. Number 3, short preganglionic neuron. Number 4, long postganglionic neurons. Number 5, fight or flight. Sympathetic division, thoracic lumbar. Number 2, sympathetic chain ganglia. 3, short preganglion neurons. 4, postganglionic neurons. 5, fight or flight. Sympathetic division, thoracic lumbar, sympathetic chain ganglia, short preganglionic nerves, long postganglionic neurons, fight or flight, preganglionic, thoracic lumbar. Okay, this is the autonomic division. The ganglion sends the information from the heart. The preganglion sends the information from the brain to the heart. Preganglion sends the information from the brain to the heart to the ganglia. Preganglion to the ganglia. Automatic division. Parasympathetic division, automatic division. Number 1, craniosacral. Number 2, organ-related ganglia. Number 3, long preganglionic neurons. Number 4, short postganglionic neurons. Number 5, rest and digest. Autonomic division. Number 1, craniosacral. Number 2, organ-related ganglia. Number 3, long preganglionic neurons. 4, short postganglionic neurons. 5, rest and digest. Endocrine system, the glandular system that doesn't have ducts. Endocrine. Number 2, secretions directly enter the bloodstream. A, actions are modulatory like the nervous system action, but are longer lasting. Endocrine system, the glandular system that doesn't have ducts, endocrine. A, endocrine. 2, endocrine system. 2, secretions directly enter the bloodstream. Actions are modulatory, like the nervous system's actions, but are longer lasting. Endocrine system, the glandular system that doesn't have ducts, endocrine. Secretion directly enters the bloodstream. Actions are made modulatory, like the nervous system action, but are longer lasting. Examples of endocrine glands: pituitary gland, thyroid gland, parathyroid gland, adrenal gland, pancreas, ovaries, testes, kidneys. Examples of the endocrine glands: pituitary gland, thyroid gland, parathyroid gland, adrenal glands, pancreas, ovaries, testicles, kidneys. Sensory organs, specialized organs of the nervous system that are designed for specific functions. Eye, ear, tongue, nose, nasal epithelium, and intrigument. Sensory organs: eye, ear, tongue, nose, and nasal epithelium. Last is intrigument.